So I decided that day that I was going to do healing for her instead of, saying come back next time. And, the initial clearing was like she went from ashen, like gray, couldn't smile, couldn't look up, to when she left about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours later, she was different.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of the Spiritual Inspired Show. I am your host, Claudiu Murgan. For older episodes, please visit gnostictv.com, spiritualinspired.ca, our YouTube channel, and also for my books, you can visit soulawakeningstore.com. My guest today is a dear friend, Ajita Shah. Ajita, thank you for accepting my invitation.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You were born in India, a country renowned for its spiritual prowess, gurus, sacred places, sacred rivers. Were you one of those kids that early in life either knew they were different or knew who they were?
I definitely felt different just because I was unlike the kids that I played with and went to school with. Um, but you're too young to think that there's something different about you. My parents were extremely strict, so I had sort of that added pressure to fit in and things like that. But I do know that I had visions as a child that I don't think others had. Not, I didn't speak about them, but neither did anybody else. So I'm not, I just assumed either everybody keeps quiet about it or it was not happening to them. But I do have some very distinct memories as a very young child. I think I was four, one of the first memories, where we'll get into that later. Um, I was seeing things and, I had imaginary friends. Also, very early on, I started to play with energy. And again, I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I was sort of had really strong intentions to take away people's pain and suffering. So I was doing something and if they would start feeling better. I mean, that's in time I began to sort of correlate and put the two together. Then maybe I was doing something that they were actually feeling better. What it was, I wasn't sure. um so yeah, I wanted different things in life than other children did, and my thought processes were different. So the answer is yes.
And you mentioned imaginary friends, and usually parents disregard this type of statement from their kids. They just say it is their imagination. So, what type of imaginary friends you had, and how they evolved with you over the years?
So this I remember distinctly. It was because it was my fourth birthday, and this creature showed up. Looked like a plush toy, very, very colorful. I think there's a plush or a cartoon character. It kind of looks like a very soft triangle, with really big eyes. So that's what this creature looked like. And it was just there, and it was. I don't know if I was startled because I don't have that sense of fear. Um, and then, this creature kind of just began to appear, disappear, and hang around for longer periods of time, and just seemed to have become a companion. There were others, but not sort of didn't stay on as long as this creature did. But I don't think I ever shared this with, definitely not my parents, with most people throughout my life. I have not spoken about these aspects of my life ever because nobody else had these kinds of experiences, so it seemed to me, and it just didn't seem right to talk about them. It wasn't mainstream.
Great. And I think a lot of my guests open up during our discussion with things that they never spoken about to anyone else. And I think it's great that I can create this type of environment where people will share more than they usually do in their regular life. And now, based on your experience, do you think that the beings from the other side change their look-alike in terms of, in order to appeal to a child, so the child is not scared? And then later on, if the child grows up, the being will also evolve in the way they will appear?
It's very hard to really give a yes or no answer to this one. They definitely don't want to scare the child, so it's very possible. Like, if I were very honest with you, I have no way to tell you what that plush creature really looked like in its true form. That could be the true form, or there was a different form and this was taken on so that I could kind of relate to it. But as I was growing up, they do tend to visit you in much more of their truer form. Often it's just light, and that in itself is quite scary for us. Sometimes there are dark energies, and they aren't very pleasant to look at. So it I think really comes down to what is your capacity to interact with the non-physical world, how far along in your spirituality you are, and what it is that they're trying to do with you. Um, so yeah, I mean, after a while, of course, it becomes more and more natural and normal for you. But it's the first few times that it happens, it can be scary.
And is there a particular memory or moment when you really thought that they are sending you a message and you have to act on it or go in a specific direction, either early in life or throughout your adulthood?
So going back to the plush toy, the plush creature, there was definitely telepathic communication. Definitely. I was actually even shown things that seemed kind of otherworldly that I didn't understand so much at the time. Um, I was afraid of the dark, and I think it had a lot to do with because I had this sense that I was being watched because there were other non-physical entities. So it was beyond like a child being afraid of the dark. So this blush creature would comfort me. I think there was some storytelling in a way, some play way in a way. Because even right now, as I try to remember, and I have people who will tell me, it was so many years ago, you don't remember accurately, but really I do. And he didn't really have a mouth. I say he, but I could tell that, there was a smile and there was playfulness in the interaction. And that's how we sort of became friends. Um, Subsequently, there are lots of non-physical entities that I have in my life that I can now, of course, the relationship is that I can directly call them to me if I'm in trouble, if I have a question. I have different systems of, sort of getting answers, yes and no sometimes. I've developed a bit of a language. There's definitely a lot of intuitive, um, sort of signs and synchronicities and messages that you get. So yeah, the answer is absolutely yes. It's constant. It's constant with so many of us. The non-physical world is always trying to communicate with us, but for most people, it's an ability that has been shut down. But when you start to open up yourself to that, then definitely they are there for you.
Yes, hopefully one day you will put all these stories in a book, and people will get encouraged to share their stories and their interaction with their imaginary friends.
Long time coming, Claudio. Let's see when that happens. Most definitely, I would love to, just haven't got around to it yet.
Yes. And I mentioned that you're born in India. So did you feel the call to come to Canada? It happened organically. And how do you think your work is much more appreciated here than in India, potentially in India, if you'd have stayed there?
I don't know, I mean, I truly believe that movement in countries and, sometimes people who you marry and, purpose and there are deeper reasons behind all of these things that happen. Um, there's destiny, there's fate, there are different aspects. So I don't think that coming to Canada was the result of a call, but it was a result of certain circumstances, and we definitely had never thought about leaving the country. But as it came about, from the idea to us landing here was 9 months, and I mean, we were not really prepared for the move, and I think there are a lot of people who resonate. We just thought we'll come here, we'll get a stamp, we'll go back, and then sort of that never happens. So from a call perspective, that's really the truth, but definitely India is sort of the land of spirituality. That's where Sanatan Dharma was born, and that is true spirituality. It is a way of life that is steeped in universal principles. And so you look at our sages and our monks, and that have, starting with the Vedas, those books were written, and there have been many very, very powerful sages that have come and left a lot of beautiful teachings for us to follow. Um, I think today we're in a real flux situation. So back then, everybody followed the spiritual path, and that was just a given, and there was no other. Then, as humanity on Earth developed, and many other uh, faiths came, belief systems came, even though when you read them all, the core is still the same, but we've sort of, a lot of things have gotten dismantled. And that's happening in India as well. There's a large part of India that is beginning to question these teachings, unfortunately, without having delved very deeply into what they are. Science, proof, all of these concepts also have diluted spirituality in really great ways. Um, while that is happening, there is definitely a resurgence. People are beginning to feel that there is more to them, there is more to their life, there is more to the answers they're getting, and they're starting to lean towards spirituality. And luckily, even though a lot of spirituality is really based on Eastern philosophy, which is what India is well known for. It's spreading in the world, and it's also being a little bit simplified so that people who are culturally not very familiar with Eastern philosophy, or their own belief systems and their culture kind of doesn't match, sort of apples to apples, they can also adopt it, and they can begin to sort of grow spiritually.
Yeah, and I think as is similar to us moving out of our countries. If I can make a comparison, when people go they have out of the body experiences, or they go astral traveling, there is still an energetic umbilical cord connecting them to the physical body. So I think we still have that energetic or similar connection to our motherland, and we go there to recharge ourselves and come back here and continue our work.
So a number of years ago, I started to really feel what I call the pull from my country. I wanted to go back, and I just didn't know why I wanted to go back. And then through my work, I started to really feel that I wanted to give back to my country. I wanted to give back to my people. And I started to spend more and more time back in India. I go very often, as you know. I have a lot of clients. I do a lot of work in India as well. Uh, one of the things, there is this whole, what we call guru parampara. Parampara is like a tradition. And a lot of people have a guru, and spirituality initially was passed down from guru to student, and it came down that way. There weren't written books. There was definitely not internet and all of that kind of stuff. So some of it got lost, and a lot of it also got lost because that importance of that tradition began to fade, and people didn't want to be gurus, and it was not very lucrative back in the day, and they wanted to do other things. um, so again, there are people who are teaching spirituality in India in a big way. I have some misgivings about that, but
Yes, it happens. Ajita, and I know that you have 2 degrees. One of it is psychology. Was that decision somehow influenced by your early encounters with the imaginary friends, or it was a different reason for you taking that path?
so I come from long line of doctors in my family. My father, both my grandfathers, grandmother, uncles, cousins. And I think there was a lot of, medical, but healing conversations in my family service, because they were all so that was definitely there. Now, my father was a very internationally renowned doctor. He was very well known for his work. He was doing very unique work in India, I mean, sort of worldwide. And he was working on a blindness disease. Nobody had a cure for it. And through his research, he was finding a cure. So and I was the eldest in the family, so it kind of, I think he had an expectation that I would become a doctor. I would be able to take over from him and follow, in his footsteps. And as much as I thought I wanted to be a doctor, I didn't want to put in the 10 years of study. And, I was much more in my head, and, I could close my eyes and do things like mugging in front of a book was just not my thing. So that sort of, I think, the realization came quite early, at least to me. My dad was a little bit slow in getting that message. But I was very interested in human behavior. I was very interested in human uh, sort of their mindset and their suffering, especially. And so, child development, I did, a bachelor's in child development, and then I did, a master's. So that is sort of what took me into that field.
You are still a doctor, you are not an MD, and you don't treat with using allopathic medicine. You use energy healing and other types of procedures. And the question is now, how do your family see what you do in terms of healing? Are they aware the level of healing and soothing you are bringing to your clients?
So today, the answer is an emphatic yes. And anytime there's a fire, I'm the fireman. Um, I also do a lot of work with people I love, friends and family all the time, in from a healing perspective, from an energetic support perspective. But again, sort of because it started so early in my life, and like I was mentioning to you, for the longest time, I didn't really talk about it, so nobody knew. But I remember many, many years ago, there was a grandma and her knees were hurting, and she really couldn't walk. And there was some function, something, and I was sitting next to her, and I put my hand on her knees, and I was doing my thing, and she was just sitting, and she was extremely fond of me. So we were kind of chatting, and that was that. She actually messaged my mom the next day, wanting to speak to me, and she said, I don't know what you did, but I know you did something, because when I left, I was feeling better. I was able to walk. I didn't have pain. And then I went for a walk. It's something, even, walking to the washroom was very hard for me. So slowly people began to sort of think maybe, and then they would, I think to themselves, oh, this is crazy. Um, but in time, people who are close to me, definitely, I have helped people recover from really critical diseases. My own sister recently was diagnosed with cancer, and I worked with her for 2 weeks before the diagnosis became so firm, because they were like, oh, we don't know, we want to do some more tests and things like that. And in my mind, if it's a big diagnosis and they're absolutely firm on it, then it's a rabbit hole. And she would go down like the chemo and this and that. But to cut a long story short, at the end of 2 weeks, they were like, we can't find the cancer. It was there, but now it's not there. We don't know what it is. Go home, kind of a thing. And she's doing really well. She's thriving. There's no problem. So they definitely know.
Yeah, the cancer got scared. And I'm very fond and attracted to the indigenous traditions. And I read a lot about their practices. And shamans usually say, I don't know how everything happens. I just know I can do it. I know that the divine or the God energy flows through me, and I don't question what I'm capable of. What's your approach to what you do?
100%. Claudia, for the longest time, people would like say, oh, what do you do? So, finally, when I gathered the courage, I started saying, I'm a spiritual healer. So they would just like, their eyes would be all big, and, they would start looking away. They're like, what is this spiritual healer business? But um, then the next question is, once Reiki and pranic healing and some of these became household names, what kind of healing do you do? Oh, I do Reiki, and I'm like, no. Okay, what do you do? And I'm like, it has no name. Like literally, I would say that for the longest time. It's just energy work. It's just healing. But what do you do? I don't know what I do. I just can show you a result. You know, it's not a 5-step process oriented thing. It's very intuitive. It's different for each person who comes in front of me. And in today's day and age, that's not appreciated or well understood, because people will come out and say, I have a 5-step method and I have this and this is the name. So finally, I'll be very honest with you, I decided to give it a name,
Okay.
because it was just getting a little quite ridiculous with, and having these extended conversations about what it is. The process still remains the same. There is no, there are a lot of people in spirituality who claim that they have their process. And I am very clear that there is no such thing. This is not discovery of radium, or X-ray. This is something that is very, very esoteric. Speaking for myself, it's information that's coming from past lives. I'm just remembering, and I'm executing. So I do not, and I will never claim that I have a system from a perspective that I've taken all of this and kind of, amalgamated it in a way that I can use it, but yet it's not, that's why it's hard to teach it. And like you just quoted a shaman, it's exactly that. It is your ability to manipulate the energy, and and just things happen. You have an intention, you know what you want to work with, and the reception, the person who's receiving it, it also plays a part in that.
Yeah, you can also say that you do Reiki on steroids. So you keep a word they know, which has a good connotation, and then
I love
steroids is not that good, but enhances the first word. So you can use that as well.
Thank you very much, because I have had to address this Reiki thing so many times, and you have to try, you don't want to, you have to be a little careful in how you put this across. Reiki on steroids. I love that.
Also, the indigenous say that they are a hollow bone for the divine, and the energy flows through them, through the hollow bone, and that's it. And I think from their perspective, that settles this discussion, and no one from outside their community will challenge that, because still in today's world, the indigenous elders still um, command certain respect outside their community.
Absolutely, absolutely, because people know what they can do. So yeah, absolutely. But you have to be an energy healer to know the intangibility of it, and yet how it can be utilized for the benefit of humanity. It's an interesting sort of you have to experience it. There are no words.
Yeah. And is the name, by any chance, OmniSource Healing of what you are doing?
Yes. So I call my process OmniSource, and the idea was really because it is source energy, and source energy is omnipresent, and so I wanted to, I wanted to never forget that it was coming from a more beautiful and a larger place.
Interesting. And can you go a little bit deeper into the process when you have a client see him or her for the first time? And also, if you can share with us one of your extreme healings, of course, keeping the privacy and whatever you can share with us.
So the process is, an individual will come to me with any number of issues. So I have, over the years, really a whole plethora of problems, whether it's physical problems, not only just disease, somebody wants to have a baby and they can't. They may have critical diseases, money problems, business not going well, all of a sudden, bankruptcy comes through, uh, relationship issues, and I also find so many things are kind of tied together. You unravel one, and many others begin to settle down and get better. Um, you want me to talk about one? So I'll share. I mean, there are so many, and warrant to be spoken of. But another very interesting thing happens, Claudio, that the people that I meet, are so divinely guided. I mean, you meet them in the most unique ways. Like if you had to chart it, with your intellect, it would be hard to do it. So I was in Dubai, and a friend of mine was just beginning to date somebody on Tinder or somewhere. And, I mean, he was open enough to say that he had a healer friend. So he just shared with her, I have a friend of mine's coming from Canada. She's a healer. And so this lady goes, I need a healer. Like, without, again, how am I going to seem to the boy or whatever? So he asked me, he said, this is my conversation. Would you be open to meet this lady? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So she came. She came over to, the apartment I was staying in. And when she walked in, Claudio, she was a lovely petite lady in a white linen dress. And as she walked in and I looked at her, all I saw was like literally death. It was very heart-wrenching to see her. Anyway, she sat down, and I, got into trying to understand her story and her history. I take a very deep history when I meet a person the first time, because there are a lot of clues there from past lives, from here, patterns. There's a lot I see based on which I kind of formulate a plan for my client. Um, and I normally will start healing from the next day. But in her case, I was just so called. Um, so to explain to you, she had been confined to a mental institution by her young daughters. And now, of course, they were 21 and 25, because of, her mental state had become quite unmanageable for the family. She was depressed, and she had been through every conceivable treatment program, psychiatrists. She had 18 electric shocks, if I, she told me, EMDR, psychotherapy. She had done it all, and nothing had worked. And to the extent that that particular year, so I met her in November, that May, her husband decided to leave, her husband of 25 years, and she was completely crushed. So I never make any tall claims that, I can help you and I can do this and I can do that. My claim is I will give you the best of what I have. So I decided that day that I was going to do healing for her instead of, saying come back next time. And, the initial clearing was like she went from ashen, like gray, couldn't smile, couldn't look up, to when she left about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours later, she was different. And then, of course, we began to, so my process is I work with my clients once a week. I came back home and we began working. And within month and a half, she was absolutely unrecognizable. She started going to the gym, and she was smiling, and she would, was able to get out of bed, and all of those kinds of things. Um, Today, I think she's moved back to France, and she's, getting a job again. Her husband and her might get back together. Her relationship with her daughters had really deteriorated over the years. They all got back together. I actually ended up working with both her daughters as well, because she wanted them to sort of heal through all the trauma that everybody had gone through. And there were some other things related to her house where I found the origin of the problem, and then I cleaned that, and that made her even better. but that's a scarier part of the story, so maybe we won't go there. But that's what happens. If I may share very quickly, there was a lady who came to me for enhancement of her work. And within a month, so she had not spoken to her in-laws for 12 years. They had a falling out, and her husband left, and they'd never looked back. And within a month, she called her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law spoke to her really beautifully, and boom, the family was back. They had not seen the three grandchildren ever. And they were a family together. And that's really not something that she had wanted to address when she came to me. So, it's a very holistic approach. Truly. I have so many examples I could share with you, but
Beautiful. And you mentioned the land and how the energies could be different from one place to another. And I know from other interviews with my guests, they were flying from, let's say, Australia to Costa Rica or Mexico or a country in Europe, and they could feel from the air, let's say Poland, very heavy energies, Costa Rica, very light, Mexico, very inviting. So some of those empaths could feel the energy of the land right away and understand if they are welcome there or not, or if there is anything they can do to change that situation, the energy.
that's at a much higher level, right? But at a family and at an individual level, I have another a client, and they're actually friends of mine. So they purchased a very lovely property not far from where I live, and they had taken us to show us. And as soon as I got there, I was like, but they had built, the foundation was done, and a lot of work was done, and there wasn't very much to say. And financially, ever since they bought the house, they've been going down. And now they started working with me. They have, two multi-million dollar homes. Their businesses have gone completely, down. They don't have sources of income, and they've run into a lot of problem. And they, have solicited my help. And the problem is the new property that they bought, because it's not only that it's a beautiful, piece of land with a ravine and lovely trees, and today it costs this much, and then it'll be an asset, and um, there is so many deeper things to consider before you buy a new home property. I'd shared with you another time when somebody had asked me to go check it out. He was going to put money down the next morning. I didn't even want to step on that land. There was like there was so many things on there. And, when I told his wife, she was not very happy because, it's almost like the ice cream you can't have. But then anyway, subsequently, they bought another property, and I still think it was not very good. So, yeah, there's so many aspects that impact us, Claudio, that we don't know about, we don't think about. And then we get into a lot of trouble. And oftentimes there are no solutions then for mainstream solutions for these kinds of things.
Yes, indeed. And
Because you don't know
we
what the problem is, right? You think about it logically.
Yes, indeed. And we talk about how you help regular people, family, friends, but I know you work with politicians, athletes, corporate leaders, and veterans. So, what common emotional or energetic patterns emerge across such diverse groups?
The beauty of human beings is that we are all so similar, right? We want the same things. That is across the board. Now, our beginnings may be different, and our experiences when we are younger um, may be quite similar. But then through various different things, some of us will overcome, we might be destined for something, and we reach more exalted positions, in our lives. But the trauma that we may have experienced would have the same impact on us than somebody who's, sort of disadvantaged in whether monetarily or any other way. Um, the desire to succeed, the desire to be happy, the desire to be healthy, the desire to impact the world, the desire to be on top of one's game, and now in today's day and age to be infinitely wealthy, is a desire that most people have, and some achieve it, many don't. And even the ones that achieve these dreams, there are still many things that they must work through, and they have issues in their lives, whether it's health, relationships. Because if you haven't done the core healing, it will follow you.
Yes. And would you say that after working with you, they have a more holistic approach to life and how they behave, incorporate and in the family?
Definitely, because I have two components to my work, right? So I do the one-on-one healing, which is a very direct, energetic impact. But I have within my session a spiritual counseling component. Because what I found, Claudia, was you can heal, but if you keep having the same thought process and behaving in ways that, sort of created the problem, then it's not permanent. And we have to unlearn the bad patterns that we might be having in our lives. So uh, that aspect gives them a real sort of, they stand in front of a mirror, they look at themselves, they analyze their thoughts, their relationships, their behaviors, their patterns, and all of those things, and they begin to realize where they are contributing to a certain situation, and very consciously are willing to unlearn that because they obviously don't want to continue to have the same results. And it is a mind, body, and spirit sort of a process. And once they have a new perspective in life and a new way of functioning and thinking, then they impact their families, they impact the people who work with them, the entire organization kind of gets restructured. They want to bring in these thought processes, these practices, these workshops, so that their own people can learn and unlearn. Because for any person who runs an organization knows fully well that the organization is run by people. And when we are in any way hurt, then whether we have issues at home, looking after elderly parents, or we've got, some issue with our children or spouses, we have health issues, we've got childhood trauma, all of that comes into the work. And once the top management has experienced this kind of very deep healing, then they understand what a hindrance that is, and they want their people to overcome. And once they are happier and healthier within their own lives and within themselves, they become very productive, team members. And what does a business want? It wants its bottom line to be very healthy, and all of that eventually leads to a far more successful business.
Yes, and I don't know if you are aware, but a while back I coined the term Chief Consciousness Officer. This is why I think I am, and any CEO in the company needs someone like me to guide him through this maze of his spiritual journey, not necessarily with the healing, but directing him to the right healers, to the right energy workers, maybe to the right shaman, to the right location in the world. So I am not an authority, but with so many interviews under my belt, I know enough people around the world that I can fulfill this type of role with, humbleness. And yes, this is what the term I coined a while back.
Yeah, no, so I think it's a very appropriate, sort of a label for yourself, because more and more people need to understand that there is a solution to their problem, and that they don't have to suffer in silence, or chalk it down to it's my fate or it's my destiny, and this is how it's always going to be, because there are so many alternatives that are energetic today, and there are more and more practitioners that are coming out or learning certain modalities, that the more we talk about these things, the more people think that there is an alternative, they would be willing to try it, and when they feel better, then it's a ripple effect.
Yes, beautiful. And, we mentioned other spiritual workers, star seeds, and some of them are quite introvert. They don't know how to walk this path and become visible and attract followers and even people who they can help. How do you see your path of becoming more visible in today's environment?
Because I've been doing it for so long, and when I kind of started, it was not a thing. It was just not a thing. So you didn't speak about it. And I know there are a number of people like me, at least if you were a shaman and you looked like a shaman and you dressed like a shaman, or like monks out of India, or you were, a preacher at a church. It was a given that you were the guy to or the person to go to. But if you look like me, normal, with higher education, and it just didn't gel, right? And so I wouldn't dare claim this. I have another business with my husband, and people would ask me, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have an interior design degree, so I'm a designer and I do this kind of thing." I would never tell them. And I think there are a lot of people in the world who, especially when they started around the time I did, um, did our work really quietly. We worked, we created that impact, but it was really small. It was before internet, so it was not even easy to disseminate the information. Before smartphones and smart cameras and things like that, the idea of um, you know, speaking to a very large audience and say, look at me, and I can do this, I can do that. It was just not a part of us. And I think slowly we are beginning to accept the calling, and respond to it and say, okay, I'm going to overcome my own inhibitions. And I am willing to accept who I am in a more public way, at the expense of ridicule and judgment and all of that. And I'm going to let my work and its results speak for itself, right? So that is definitely happening. And speaking for myself, I've been struggling with this for over 5 years. But now I have, here I am on your podcast, very openly speaking about things that I really wouldn't. And we've discussed other supernatural aspects. We also are taught about humility and don't talk about your accolades and your, all of those kinds of things. And so, at least I can speak for myself. My thing was that I'm just going to do good work, and whoever needs to benefit will be sent to me.
Yes, and another aspect from my perspective is authenticity, that you can be attacked, you can be ridiculed, but if you know what you are capable of, and if you know how to address these issues when you are challenged, then everything will go away. And as you said, your work will speak for itself, and you will have long-lasting results. But if I claim something that I'm not capable of delivering, then of course I deserve the ridicule, I deserve all the backlash. And in my personal opinion, I will never do that, just to avoid this type of conflict that will just bring me down in the end.
That's actually not been true in the recent times. There have been people that have made claims that have been proven false. But when you have a very large following, it really didn't seem to make a big dent in, we kind of thought that, okay, they continue to do good work, kind of a thing. So right now, the waters have the entire spectrum of people, from people who really should not be doing this work, all the way to people who are absolutely phenomenally very good, and everything in between. And it's a balancing thing, right? Like you said, at some point when you're not authentic in what you're delivering, you fall off, or you lose interest, or you get caught out, or whatever happens. And you know we have a saying in Hindi, the water, and if you add water to milk, there's a process where the water and the pure milk kind of get separated. And so, it's that kind of a balancing process that I think we're going through for sure.
Yes, indeed. Ajita, I think this is the right moment to insert a scary section in our discussion. And you shared with me that you are capable of opening up portals. Can you share that experience with us, please?
Oh my God, you really want to go there, huh? So, since I was a child, as I mentioned, I was comfortable with playing with energy. I was comfortable interacting with non-physical entities. I haven't mentioned that, but much later in my life, started with astral travel, and kind of dimensional travel consciously became a part of my thing. Um, but one day I was sitting, it was late at night, and so this was before the conscious dimensional travel started. I was sitting, it was dark room, may have been 11 p.m. And I don't know what came over me. And I looked towards the ceiling and I said, wouldn't it be nice if I could open a portal? Right. And I just started to, I'm not sure do what. And I kept looking at that space, and and very quickly it started to get fluid. It was a solid ceiling, and then it started to move. So I'm like, oh, it's moving. And then it started to get a little bit of a pinkish hue. And then it started to expand in sort of an elliptical shape. And it started to pulsate, and there was a deep purple, and there was silver, and different colors, and it started to grow. And I'm looking at it and in awe, And then all of a sudden, I had a thought that if this portal gets bigger and it opens up, and if it pulls me in, I do not know how to get back. And I don't know where it is going to take me. Right? So immediately I kind of disconnected and, I'd kind of dusted. But that was, a very interesting experience. It was my first time. And then I've played with many things after that. Um, very, it's real fun to do that because you really realize how vast this universe is and this empty space where we think we have hydrogen and oxygen and some of the things that science has taught us is just a fraction. There are immense things, including knowledge, that exists here that that we could benefit from.
Yes, indeed. So next time you have to tie a rope around your waist and be sure that you can come back.
Yeah, I'm a little bit better at it now, but yeah.
Jita, if you have to take a spiritual pilgrimage in India, what would your favorite locations be?
A pilgrimage?
Yes.
I love Shiva. I am, I really love Shiva. So there are two very important. So Mount Kailash, which is considered the crown chakra of the earth, is considered the abode of Shiva. It is a mountain that the mountaineering community in the world has agreed never to climb. Because it's a sacred space. And I would really like to visit Mount Kailash. It's not an easy trip to take. Now it is in Chinese territory, so, and it takes a long time to get to Mount Kailash, but that is really um, very, very high on my bucket list. And it takes 3 days, I think, to if you were to walk around the mountain. And there are very mysterious things that happen to different people that travel there. And one of the things that people talk about is that their nails grow unnaturally long, their hair grows, their skin changes. So there's some sort of an aging process, perhaps. There's some sort of time lapse or time travel, or I'm not sure what happens there. So I'm very, very keen to go visit that. And there are 12 um, sacred spots also related to Shiva, where there's a story that goes that his different limbs were sort of he was buried, and there's a whole story, and there are 12 of them from the north of the north, south, east, and west, and I've visited a few, so my thing is that I want to go to all 12 of them. In fact, last year when I was in India, I was all set to go. Like everything was done. I got quite sick. I got a really bad respiratory infection just the night before I had to cancel it.
Yes, but because you are such a big lover of Shiva, he will do his best to ease your way next year and achieve your goal.
Thank you very much. Yeah, tomorrow, next year, I have a milestone birthday coming up, and I'm thinking that that would be a great gift to myself.
Perfect. And there is anything else you want to mention about your programs and how people can reach out to you?
So my sort of most important work that I do is the one-on-one healing because it is so very potent, it's so very deep, it's so very specific to the individual. Um, so nothing cannot be addressed through that. But I also, am from a teaching perspective, I have three programs that I love. So Awaken Your Intuition, is at least a 1 day workshop that I do. We take 30,000 decisions a day minimum. Often we use our brains, and the intuition sits in the heart. And to really know what is the right path to take for us when we have many options, having a very sharp intuition, I think, is a superpower. And then I have, like you were saying, I work with corporates and high level teams, and there are other teams too, or even small business people who are um, experiencing blocks, and the path is just not very clear in business. So I have a program where I use energetics and all of these principles of spirituality to help them really accelerate and succeed in business. So it's much more than just strategy and those kinds of principles to succeed. And then I have a program where I teach people how they can take the principles of healing and heal themselves, their family, their pets. So it's not necessarily, I do have an advanced course for people to become healers, but my pet one is for people to learn the fundamentals that they can utilize, on themselves, and the principles, and just, get out of trouble and not get into more trouble.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And you are both an entrepreneur and an energy healer, spiritual teacher. What's your next frontier on the professional and personal side?
This is who I am. This is what I do, right? But my focus now is to share with people the potency of energy healing, karmic healing, because it's what I do, and I see the results, and my clients see the results, as an alternative to all the other things that they're doing, where they're not getting results, and they're continuing to be in difficult situations. It's a really big focus for me now, to relay what all of this is about and what deep healing is about. Today we use the word healing in many very loose ways, and there are aspects of healing, but I'm talking about soul healing, where really your really deep stuff sits. And you can't heal everybody. Not everybody wants to be healed. So I want to share the fundamental principles with people that will sort of compute in their minds, within their belief systems, and they have takeaways again that they can utilize, and help themselves.
Yeah,
So that's
nice.
really what I'm going to focus on for the next few years.
Perfect. And thank you, because we all are going to benefit from it. Ajita, what's your perception of God?
Whoa. Well, for me, God is this big, beautiful, all powerful, all present source. I don't know if we have the language to really be able to speak to what God is, but within the language that we do have, this is how I look at it. I believe everything that in the universe that exists is the dream of the Almighty, of God, and we are within the simulation of that. But we are hugely powerful because we have the same source energy within us. We forget that. We get embroiled in our lives. And, coming from India, where we have, I don't know what is the exact calculation, but we call it 33 crore gods and goddesses. So, and because we have figurines that are multiple, figurines with specific names of the gods, it doesn't mean that there are 33 crore gods. It just is a way to emphasize the magnitude of God. And these are all because each god has his or her own power, and it's all eventually goes to source. And we also can't pray to the source for most people because we don't have that much capacity. So when we have a version of that source energy, it becomes so much easier for us to concentrate on the idol and on that little aspect of God's great power. um, you know, and that's what I think God is.
Yes, and we all have to work on ourselves, and in order to reach a certain level of consciousness and awareness. And the comparison I usually make in terms of how determined one is to work to do this type of work is, what are you going to do on a Saturday or Sunday night? Are you going to watch a movie or go and meditate for an hour or more? So that, I think, also shows a level of dedication and determination to better yourself on the spiritual side, of course.
See, most people don't know about spirituality, or they have a different concept of what spirituality is, and they love their lives in spite of everything. And and they're steeped in the family and the money and the relationships and all of that. And that's their path for now, and that's absolutely fine. But there are people who are, so to expect that those people are going to adopt any spiritual practices and rituals in their daily lives, I think is unfair and unreasonable because they don't want to, right?
Yes.
But then there is the breakaway group that is beginning to um, concentrate on themselves. They want to grow. They want to know who they are. They want to overcome things in their lives. They're leaning towards spirituality, and they're adopting the rituals and the practices within spirituality. And I think that group is more diligent in saying, this is my time to meditate, and it is non-negotiable. I will see you before or after. And I can see that that is definitely beginning to happen with people. Most of us are not here to become monks. Our journey is through living the human experience and evolving through learning, through our mistakes and through our experiences with one another. And that is, I think, for the vast majority of people. And we're doing as it suits us, as our path takes us, and more people are beginning to join this path. So it's
Yes.
great.
We have a deep desire to remember who we are.
Who we are,
Yes.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Ajita, we are at the end of this lovely discussion. Any final words?
Have faith in yourself if you can, and believe in source energy, God. Have faith. We're not here to suffer. We're not here to lead a very small life. You know, I have a program that says becoming unlimited. We are unlimited beings, and I think it is our responsibility to tap into the limitlessness of us, and continue to expand and evolve our soul, remember who we are, and great things happen. Great happiness will be part of your life, and the world will be better for us having all of us being on that path.
Thank you very much. Much love from me and all the best in what you are doing.
Thank you very much for having me.
And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Share it, leave a comment, visit the links I mentioned at the beginning of the interview. And until next time, love and gratitude.